Every woodworker wants their own style. I know I do. And there's been one question going through my mind. How do I develop my own style? When I learned the guitar, I had a teacher. Navy SEAL, I had a teacher. But building furniture, no teacher. So today, I'm stealing from the masters, starting with this one. I'm gonna build my way through this book. Not one project, as many as I can. Boxes, cabinets, maybe a few larger pieces, and the question is, if I copy enough of another craftsman's work, will I accidentally learn something about my own style? Before I started this project, I thought style was something you just eventually figured out. Build enough furniture, make enough mistakes, and one day you'd just have your own look. But the more furniture I study, the less I think that's true. Every piece reminds me of something else. A Maloof chair, a Krenov cabinet, a Nakashimi table. Even the furniture makers we think of as originals were influenced by somebody, which got me wondering, maybe style isn't something you create, maybe it's something you collect. This is a shooting board. A year ago, I didn't even know what this was. Now I use it on almost every project, and that's kind of the point. Most of the things I've learned over the last year didn't come from figuring them out myself. They came from watching somebody else do it first. A technique, a process, a way of holding a tool. Little things that didn't seem important at the time until they became a part of how I work. And maybe what I'm really after here isn't a cabinet or even a style. I'm just trying to figure out how people got good at this. Because every furniture maker I admire seems to have walked the same path. Study the masters, build the projects, steal what works, and leave the rest. By the time I got to the dovetails, I wasn't really looking at the finished cabinet anymore. I was paying attention to the decisions. Why this joint? Why this layout? Why this instead of something simpler? Because none of these choices happened by accident. Somebody sat down and decided this was the best way to build it. Before I started building furniture, I mostly judged pieces by how they looked. If it looked good, I liked it. If it didn't, I didn't. Pretty simple. But building someone else's work forces you to spend time with decisions you'd never notice from a picture. And that's probably been the biggest surprise so far. The things I thought I'd learn from this project aren't actually the things I'm learning. I thought I'd be studying design. Instead, I'm paying attention to judgment. This is the first thing I changed. The original cabinet has a beadboard back, and I may build it that way next time. But I had a piece of bird's eye maple sitting in the shop that I've been saving for the right project, and this seemed like a pretty good candidate, so I went with it. Maybe that's part of developing a style. Not changing things just to be different, just following what catches your eye. For the shelves, I used the Shaper Origin and some chisels to square up the mortises. But I don't know if it's the best way yet. If I build enough of these cabinets, I'll probably end up trying 3 or 4 different approaches. And that's another reason I wanted to do this. Not to build one project, to build enough projects that I start figuring out what works for me. If you've never made a piston fit drawer before, you'd think the sides are the hard part. Well, really they're not. Most of it comes down to the front. Everything has to be squared. The opening, the drawer, all of it. And I'm looking for a tight fit side to side, but I still need a little room vertically for some wood movement, which usually means taking a few passes, checking the fit, taking a few more, until it fits just right. This is where the shooting board really shines. You're not removing much material. Sometimes it's just a couple thousandths at a time. But when the difference between too loose and too tight is barely visible, that's exactly what you want. It's slow, but it's one of those things that's hard to appreciate until you do it for yourself. And when it finally slides in just right, you forget how many times you had to pull it back out. For the drawers, these were the first half-blind dovetails I've cut by hand, which probably explains why the first drawer took so long. Every cut felt important, every mistake felt expensive. I must have checked those layout lines 10 times before I picked up my saw. But the second drawer, I wasn't nearly as careful. Not because I cared less, but because I finally trusted what I was seeing. A few weeks ago, I would have looked at half-blind dovetails and found a way to avoid them or maybe cut them with the shape or origin. Now it's just another step in the project. So the drawers were finally starting to come together, which meant it was time to figure out the pulls. And unlike the dovetails, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I bought a lathe a few weeks ago, and since then I've made a few mallets, a couple little bowls, and not much else. Basically, I've had this thing long enough to be dangerous, but not long enough to be good, which made this the perfect time to turn a set of drawer pulls. Now, everything up to this point had a plan. These pulls didn't, so I grabbed a piece of wood, turned on the lathe, and hoped for the best. I didn't sketch them, I didn't model them, I just started cutting. Every once in a while I'd stop, look at it, and decide if it was getting better or worse. Surprisingly, they didn't end up terrible. Somehow, they ended up looking like they belonged on the cabinet. For the drawer bottoms, I started with some scrap plywood. Nothing fancy, just something that would get the job done. Then I remembered I had some curly maple offcuts sitting in the corner. They were almost the perfect size, which felt like a pretty good sign. They were just sitting there, already milled, already the right thickness, basically begging to become drawer bottoms. So the plywood went back on the shelf and the curly maple got the job. So what did I learn? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. It's only one cabinet. I changed the back, made my own pulls, and there were a few details I'd probably do differently next time, but I don't think that's enough information. There are still boxes in this book, more cabinets, a few larger pieces, and I have a feeling that's when things start getting interesting. Because I'm not really trying to learn how Mike Pekovich builds furniture, I'm trying to figure out what happens when I build enough of it that some of it starts becoming my own. This cabinet's finished, but the experiment isn't, so I'll see you in the next one. And if you want to see the rabbit hole that got me here in the first place, then watch this video next.